If you need to make yourself a sword, this tutorial should be relatively quick and easy. The sword is a little bit asymmetrical, which was totally not an accident. I definitely planned that. Alright, let's get started. I wanted to make a quick mention that I'm going to be using the NES Palette today in Aseprite. I should have a link to both of those in the description. So working on the diagonal here, we'll start with the pommel at the top right, or the tip of the sword is going to be on the bottom left. We'll also pick a midpoint here for the guard. And then right after that, we'll work on the handle or hilt, whatever it's called. One of these days, I'll remember the name of these things. I do try to remember to work both sides at the same time, because it's more likely to be even and equal. And then I'm going to throw in my flat colors here and do some sculpting to figure out how I want my guard to look. I had no real plans for this one. I just kind of went for it. And I kind of went for this like horn shape, but as you can see, I did curve the bottom one and not the top one. Sometimes I get annoyed that I didn't make it perfectly symmetrical, but it gave it a little bit of personality, I think. Now I decided on this blue to complement the yellow that I'm using, and you can see I'm experimenting with the sword shape, but I ended up deciding to leave it alone for the most part. And then I'm going to start picking out my colors for my highlights after finishing up on that area of the sword. I'm trying to keep in mind that most of this is kind of rounded out, although the guard may be a bit more flat looking. Now I'm going to be adding the shadow to it and everything. It gives it more depth and makes it look more interesting. And of course, I haven't finished with the blade, so I need to take care of that. I brighten it up a little bit, add a little bit of an extra mid-tone in there. And then, of course, I end up playing with the shape. Maybe I should add a little bit of the dark outline to the middle. I am using my black outline for some of the shading, and this is because I'm very limited on my colors in this palette, because the hardware that this came from could only handle so much at a time. Now, if I really wanted to imitate the NES and everything, my sprite size probably can't be 32 by 32, but I thought it would just be fun to use these colors. Right, so I'm actually adding some rim lighting on the bottom edge of the sword just to give it a little bit more of an interesting look. And of course, I forgot to add a little bit of highlight on here, but I've gotten it taken care of with this brighter yellow. And there you have it, that's our first simple sword. Now my second sword again was unplanned, but I ended up going with kind of like a butterfly look on the guard, and then threw in some pink on this one. So this time I started with the pommel, moved over to the hilt, and then we're going to do the guard. And I start shaping the guard on this one immediately. Trying to get it as symmetrical as I can, bouncing back and forth between each side. And I think I ended up working out a pretty nice shape on this one. The blade on this one is thicker. And I initially started with the same colors, but then I was like, you know what, let's try something a little bit different, and started experimenting. There's no harm in trying a whole bunch of different colors till you find something you're happy with. Like, I'm using this dark orange for my shading instead of going directly where the pinks and stuff are. And then I went for a brighter pink on the highlights, you know, just having a lot of fun with it. Realistic colored swords are nice and everything, but sometimes it's nice to just have something non-traditional. Aside from that, I don't think anybody would use a sword like this in real life anyway. I mean, I could be wrong. Then of course, I take care of the shading on the blade, doing something a little bit different with how I handled it on this one. And I went for the rim lighting a little early, but hey, no harm in it. Oh, and make sure your guard, if it's like this, does cast a little bit of shadow on the blade. I went for a purple on the hilt on this one for a little more harmony at first, but then I added the magenta, tried a blue, and I overall just experimented with the colors that I was given for this. And then once I got the texture I wanted down and everything, I started thinking a little more about it. I was like, maybe I want to use colors that are more contrasted to the actual main color. And I do think in the end that these yellows look a lot better on this sword. And of course, I add my brightest highlights and everything to it at this point. I think it looks really nice. I really like this one. And I wanted a darker shadow, but I really didn't have a good color for that, so I ended up using the black here for this. I think it gives it a really unique and fun look. And there we have it. Tell me what you think, what you would change, maybe. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. See ya!